Okay, so here I started the recording. Shalom, and I'll just say in a nutshell, mamash, 3 minutes, so because I won't go into all the examples. What we did last week, and then what we need to do today is to read on the Gemara. Okay, that's what we're going to do. Last week was a shir, I think an important shir. Important, when I say important, and that's why I want you to keep it in mind, not only for harayos, or when your children are asking you questions about pshat and drash, because they can hear all kinds of things from all kinds of circles, okay? And here you got some good sources supporting a certain position. And that is, our Gemara definitely was implying that there is a certain difference that the sages have seen between pshat and drash, simply put, okay? And I want to clarify this. Not that chas v'shalom, we are Karaites or Tzedokim, you and I, that we don't follow the halacha of the sages, even when it deviates from the pshat. Chas v'shalom, we are committed to the halacha, to midrashay halacha, even when these midrashay halacha are very far from the pshat. Okay? Now, even the sentence I said now, some circles, extreme ones, I have to say, will stone me. You dared to say that the midrash deviates dramatically from the pshat? The pshat is what the sages are saying. Let's say, I want to illustrate that point, okay? Excuse me that I'm elaborating, but I think it's important, okay? I said 2 minutes, now I see it will take maybe a shtickle more. Let's say in a week, in 2 weeks and a half, we'll read Parshat Mishpatim, okay? In 2 weeks and a half, we'll read Parshat Mishpatim. It's written there, Ayin Tachat Ayin, right? There, and it's written there, eye for eye. If you are having a quarrel, you have a fight with someone, and you uproot his eye, then the simple verse says, Ayin Tachat Ayin. Now, our sages interpret it that it doesn't mean chas v'shalom that the Beit Din will physically take your eye out, the attacker's eye, but that will uproot that you'll have to pay the eye to compensate, eye for eye. Okay. Now, one approach, specifically even in this case, has some support to say no. If I'll show from parallel verses that indeed ayin tachat ayin in the pshat means monetary compensation. However, the Gra, for instance, and the Gra is a giant, the Gra doesn't understand that way. The Gra says, Ayin Tachat Ayin, the Pshat is, as literally the Pshat, that the Torah and the Pshat said that the Beit Din should pull the eye out of the attacker. However, the Gra wasn't the Karaite. The Gra says, Halacha okeret mikra. Look at that. What an extreme expression, the Gra says. The halacha uproots the verse, meaning the halacha establishes here, the midrash, the Gra says, deviates from the pshat and tells you that the meaning of the Torah, halacha, practically is monetary compensation and not pulling the eye. Now, why did the sages do that according to the Gra? It's very clear. Because when the sages at their role as interpreters of the Torah to practicality, they take the entire values of the Torah and balance them. And therefore they say when you implement the punishment in this human world, there is midas harachamim. So now you'll ask, so why, according to the Gra, why did the Torah write it in a way that will mislead us? Meaning, why is the pshat Why wouldn't the Torah say up front, if someone pulls the eye from someone else, you should compensate him monetarily? Why does the Torah have to mislead us and write it as if it's pulling his eye out? Okay, you understand the question. The answer is very good. There is a spiritual value, the way the Torah is written, a message. The Torah is telling you, look, this guy really deserves, from a certain perspective. It is so terrible that he uprooted the eye during that fight with his friend. It is so terrible that he really deserves, from a certain perspective, that his eye will be pulled out. He deserves it. Only when we implement this judgment, then we take into considerations other considerations, and we are saying no, and practicality will only require him to pay money. But he should see this payment as a certain ransom, as if his eye was pulled. That's what rescued me from my eye. The attacker should feel that this payment is instead what I really deserve from a certain perspective, that my eye will be pulled. Now, this whole message would have been lost if the written Torah would be only, if someone attacks someone and pulls his eye out, he should pay. That's why the Torah phrases itself, ayin tachat ayin, according to the Gra. Why did I elaborate on this? Because as you see, according to the Gra's approach, there is a pshat and there is a drash. And the pshat has a value and the drash has a value. And of course, practically we'll always follow the drash in terms of the halacha l'maisa, whatever the sages are leading us how to implement in this world. The Torah, we will follow it, meaning the written Torah and its pshat is some ideal. And then the oral Torah really translates this written Torah, how to implement it in our world. And sometimes that's the focus of the drash. And therefore the drash could deviate from the pshat, and it's okay. I elaborated on this because some circles will tell you, no, there is no gap between pshat and drash. What do you mean? You know, what is the pshat? The pshat is what the sages are telling you in the drash. That's really the pshat. You can't say any other interpretation aside from what appears in the Midrash Halacha. There's no legitimacy. Now, needless to say that the Ibn Ezra and Nachmanides and all these giants, if you just read what they're writing in their payers to the Torah, you'll see that they disagree with this approach. They're offering plenty of explanations that are deviating from the Midrash of the sages. They're saying, "V'rabotenu pershu kach v'kach," but I feel that this is the interpretation. Now, weren't they halachic Jews? Of course they were. In terms of practicality, they followed everything the Midrash Halacha is saying. They only said that it's important also to find the interpretation of the pshat. Now, our Gemara, from a different angle of this topic, our Gemara implied that there is indeed a valid, that the sages acknowledge a difference between pshat and drash. Our Gemara clearly implies that the sages acknowledged that there is a pshat and a drash, and they're not the same thing. Because our Gemara said, I'll remind you our point of departure, the law of Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, that every ruling that the Tzedokim, meaning the group of people that accepted only, accepted the authority in terms of practical halacha only of what derives from the simple interpretation of the verses, the pshat. So a ruling of Sanhedrin that is deviating, that is against something that is implied from the simple understanding of the psukim, i.e. something that the tzdokim agree with, this no public bull is brought, because it's considered, as we explained, as if there was no ruling at all here. It's such a, the Gemara says, Zilkari Beiravu. It's such a fundamental mistake. It's such an amaratzus ignoring what's written clearly in the written Torah that every kid could read, if a Sanhedrin did such a thing, it's not a shoge, it's not a hurrah. There is no, it won't be considered as public error. And as Darren said, perhaps, and we've seen that perhaps even the individuals who followed that erroneous ruling will have to bring an individual chametz. Okay, maybe yes, maybe no. So Chaverim, our Gemara implied that the sages acknowledged a difference between laws that are derived from the pshat and laws that are derived merely from a midrash. We have given, in the previous year, we didn't read on in the Gemara, in our Gemara, we gave two more examples where there is a halachic difference between laws that are derived from the pshat and laws that are derived from drash. They're all deraisa, don't get me wrong. The minute the sages make a midrash interpreting exegesis, interpreting a verse in the Torah, even if it's not pshat, that law has a validity and authority of deraita many times. Many times. And yet still there is a halachic difference. I'll mention the two of them very briefly. That will take me 1 minute. There is a law, a positive obligation, one of the 613, to learn Torah every day. The Ran against Rishonim, the Ran in Nedarim, disputes with some Rishonim, says the following position. Right, the obligation is to learn as much as you can per day, as much as your kochos allow you. That's your right obligation. However, there are two layers within that the right obligation, two layers. What's written in the Doraita, in the Pshat, is Vehagita bo yomam v'layla, meaning that the Pshat of the Psukim is that you're obligated only to say one Kriyat Shema in the morning and Kriyat Shema in the evening. That's from the Pshat. Then the Midrash, the sages elaborate and say that you should learn Midoraita as much as you can. But therefore, when you make a swearing, an oath cannot catch, has no validity if you are making an oath on what's written in the written Torah, in the Pshat. But if you make an oath regarding a Doraita law that is derived merely from a Midrash and oral Torah, then there is a validity to this oath. That was one implication of a difference between Pshat and Drash that the sages acknowledge. Okay, another example aside from our Gemara Harayas. A third example to the acknowledgement of the difference between Pshat and Drash was regarding when do you have an obligation to rebuke? Yeah, when you see someone sins and you have an obligation to rebuke him. And then there is a consideration not to rebuke him if you assess that he won't listen to you. And you say, Mutav Yehush, it's better that he will be a shogeg and not a mazid. Then the Rashba says, if he is violating a law that is written in the written Torah and the Pshat, you don't make that cheshbon, you rebuke him. However, if he violates a Doraita law that is not written explicitly in the Torah, but is learned from the sages are deriving it not from Pshat, then you should make the consideration of, will he listen to me or not? Okay, so you see again an illustration for that difference, an acknowledgement of the rabbis for the difference between Pshat and Drash, acknowledgement that has even a halachic implication. Now, after these things have been said and done, let's please go to our Gemara. So kindly open Daf Dalet Amud Aleph, Everybody, please go to Daf Dalet Amud Aleph. And guess what? We are in the Dalet Amud Aleph towards the bottom of the page. You see, the rows are becoming wider. So one row above the rows that are becoming wider, the second word before the end, it's Tnan. You see Tnan. Everybody, Tnan yesh nida b'Torah. Tnan yesh nida b'Torah. I want to see if everyone is with me in terms of that everyone has the spot. Darren, do you have the spot? Yeah, okay. Mickey, you have the spot. Sish, you have the spot. David, I hope you have the spot.
Yeah.
Noam? Noam? All right, maybe.
I'm here. I apologize. If you're able to send to us a DUF over Zoom or WhatsApp,
But you know what? Do you have the daf? Even without the tzur sadaf, do you have the daf at all? Dalet Amud Aleph?
I apologize. I don't.
Oh, you don't have a Rayos Gemara. Okay. So no. It's a kol beseder. Next.
Rabbi, it's no problem. There's plenty of sites. I can pull up the DUF right now. What DUF is it?
It's Daf Dalet Amud Aleph in Orayos. Open it up.
I'll pull it up right now.
And it's towards the last fourth of the daf. You see, if you have the tzur sadaf, it's one row above the wider rows in the bottom. I'm sure you're going to find it, Noam.
Yes, I got it.
Nan, yesh nida b'Torah. Daniel, Flagler. Okay, Nan. Okay, good. Nan, yesh nida b'Torah. אבל הבעל שומרת יום כנגד יום פטור. והמאי שומרת יום כנגד יום, הכתיב וספרה לה, מלמד שסופרת אחד לאחד. Okay, let's explain the kashi of the Gemara. The Gemara, and here you see a support to the position that was against Zish. I'll explain you, excuse me, Zish, for saying it. I'll explain what I mean. We have seen in the Mishnah a position, a reminder, that if the Beit Din, the Sanhedrin, issued a ruling that approves an entire concept, like there is no nida in the Torah at all.
Rab Kanai.
Yeah.
I apologize. Okay, so I got it. Daf Dalet Amud Aleph. You're holding what line?
You see the wide rows on the bottom? So one row above it, in the second last word, there's written Tnan. You see
Tnan yesh avodas kochav b'Torah?
No, Tnan yesh nida b'Torah. Dalet Amud Aleph. You see all the wide rows, one row above it. Tnan yesh nida b'Torah aval abal shomer siyom keneged yom patur.
That's from the bottom up, or from the...
No, there is the wide rows and then one row above the wide rows.
Yes.
The last narrow row.
The last narrow row. Yeah, very good.
I got it. Tnan yesh nida b'Torah aval shomer siyom keneged.
Video. Very good, Noah. So now, but I'll just give you the background again. We had a Mishnah in Gimel Amud Beis. The Mishnah in Gimel Amud Beis established a certain principle, and it learned it from a pasuk, that if you give a ruling to uproot an entire concept, meaning there is no nida in the Torah, there's no Shabbos in the Torah, there's no avodas kochavim in the Torah, yeah? This whole concept is away, then there is no public bull brought. However, if they say there is a concept of nida in the Torah, but a whole branch within that concept, meaning a whole category, as I coined it, let's say the din of shomeres yom keneged yom, a lady that sees blood off her period time, and she sees it only for 1 day, not for 7 days, then she needs to be clean only 1 day. That's the Doraita law. The sages then added all kinds of decrees, okay, that we follow today. At any rate, if a Beit Din issues a ruling, if Sanhedrin issues a ruling, that there is a nida in the Torah, but there is no law, ois law, of a shomeres yom keneged yom, a lady that sees blood for one day off her period doesn't have to keep a clean day, okay? Or if she didn't keep a clean day and someone had intercourse with her, they're pturim, there's no problem with it, okay? So this is a thing that they are bringing a public bull on such an error, yeah? Now, the Gemara challenges Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, because Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel added another law. Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel said, not only the Mishnah said that when you uproot an entire concept, there's no bull brought, I'm also saying that if the Sanhedrin issued a ruling that is uprooting something that is against something that is written in the Pshat of the Torah, and no public bull is brought. Okay? Now, Zish at the beginning wanted to say that these two laws are identical. Here, at least from the discourse of the Gemara, it is implied that it's not the same thing. The Gemara challenges this din of Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel from our Mishnah. The Mishnah gave an example to when a public bull is brought. And the example the Mishnah gave is the following. Tnan, I'm now reading again. Yesh nida b'Torah. There is a concept of nida in the Torah, but one who is having intercourse with a lady that saw for one day blood off her period and didn't make tevilah and wasn't clean for one day, one that had intercourse with her is exempt, patur. That was an example for a mistake, an erroneous ruling that a public bull is brought. Now the Gemara challenges Shmuel. V'amai, why, according to Shmuel, why did the Mishnah say that in such a case a public bull is brought? Shomeres yom keneged yom, aktiv v'safrala, melamed shesoferet echad leechad. The Gemara understands that that is contradicting an explicit verse. So no public bull should be brought. Even though it's not a concept, it's merely a category. Who cares? Of course, Zish can defend his position and say that the depth of the kasha of the Gemara is the following. Since there is an explicit verse for Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom, therefore, it's not really a category, it's a concept, okay? It's like a goof. One can also learn it this way. Be it this way or that way, the Gemara here challenges the law of Shmuel. Because Shmuel said that when there is a ruling that is contradicting an explicit verse, no public bull is brought. And here the Mishnah gave an example for a case where a public bull is brought, even though it contradicted an explicit pasuk in the eyes of the Gemara. It's written regarding the Zava, the lady that sees blood off her period. It's written V'safrala, and it says V'safrala Shivas Yamim. And the sages infer from here, Melamed Shesoferet Echad Lechad, that you have to count the day for a day. Great. Now, I have here a question for y'all. Okay, I have here a question for y'all. And the question is very simple. This day of Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom. And what the Gemara claims, this is a thing that the Tzdokim concede. Why? Because it says V'safrala melamed shesoferet echad leechad. Nachon? That's what the, wait a minute. Yeah, exactly. So now I'm asking you, I don't know, do you all remember the verses there? I'm asking you a simple question. The verse is, I'm telling you the secret. The verse doesn't say you count a day for a day. The verse say that if the lady, the Zava, is seeing beyond her period, not beyond, excuse me, at a time that is not her period, she's a Zava, below Es Nidasa, V'safra shivas yamim. So what is the pshat of the pasuk? That she's counting how many clean days? Yes, everyone answer. I told you, it says V'safra shivas yamim.
7.
Is it written there anyway in the pshat that when she sees only for one day, then she counts only one day for that one time that she saw? Well, I'm sorry, it's not written there in the pshat. You know what? If you don't believe me, I can open you the verses. It will take a second. Yeah, 1 second, please. Yeah, I didn't make my homework. I'm sorry here, but it will take a second. Excuse me, excusez-moi. Will really take 1 second. I'll share with you the verses. It will take a second. Let's share the verses. Oh, maybe I have even a better source. Excuse me. Now I'm greedy. I want to bring you a more friendly version. Ah, good, good, very good. Here, let's share the screen, and you'll see the verses, and you'll see whether I'm selling you nuts. I don't want you guys to believe me. I want you to see that I'm not selling you here. וידבר השם אל משה ולאהרון לאמור. Y'all see it? וידבר השם אל משה ואהרון לאמור. דברו ואמרת איש איש כי יהיה. Okay, that's the zav. We don't care about that. ואישה, and a lady. היא תהיה זב אדם, יהיה זובב. 7 ימים תהיה בנידתה. That's the simple din of nida. She sees in her period. Very good. ואישה, פסוק כ"ה. You see? ואישה, כי יזוב זוב דמה ימים רבים בלא את נידתה. Meaning she's seeing the blood not at the time of her period. She is impure. Ve'im tahara mizova, if she stopped bleeding, ve'safra la shiv'at yamim ve'achar titar. This is our verse, Chaverim. It says, a lady that is seeing for several days, Yamim Rabim, without, not in the time of her Nida, or, yeah, and then she should count 7 days, and afterwards she will be pure. Great. Tell me, Chaverim, did you see or anything explicit about a lady that sees only for 1 day, that she should count only 1 day for it? Well, I apologize, I haven't seen such a verse here. At least not explicit. There is a midrash. The midrash says v'safra la. What is v'safra la? She should count for herself. It seems superfluous, the law. The sages infer melamed shesoferet echad leechad, that she counts day for a day. And by the way, it's not technical that let's say that if she's seeing 5 days that she has to be at 5 days clean. No, not the midrash. The midrash says if she sees a day or 2, she counts 1 day. And if she stays more than 2 days, 3 till 7, She counts 7 days. Fantastic. That's not written explicitly in the Torah. Why should the Tzdokim concede to that? So I have a kasha on the Gemara here. The Gemara assumes that the drash of Safra day for day, is so evident that even the Tzdokim concede to it. That's the basis for the kasha. That is putting a very fundamental question on our table. Where does the line go between pshat, between pshat and drash? Or I'll say the following: the tzdokim, what do they agree with, and what do they disagree with? Meaning, how far? So the drash. You remember I told you there are some things that are clear pshat. There's some things that are clear drash that deviates dramatically from the pshat. That's the two extremities. A drash that deviates extremely from the pshat, or a pshat that is mamash the literal pshat. But then there is a gray area. And perhaps our Gemara understood that this is a gray area. It's written the Safrala, and it was written the Mim Rabim, that only in your Mim Rabim it's 7 days. So what happens if it's not your Mim Rabim? It's only 1 day. It's just Yamim, 1 or 2 days. Then it says V'safrala, day for a day. It's definitely not the clear-cut pshat. It doesn't deviate, perhaps that's what the Gemara thought, so much from the pshat. And there are some anchors in the pshat to that interpretation. So here, the Gemara assumed in its kasha that the tzdokim concede to that. That's interesting. Okay? And therefore, a public bull should not be brought. It's like a zil kare ve'rav, which is really far-fetched to say that every kid will understand when he reads the Torah. Every kid, every ignorant person will understand that a shomeres yom keneged yom needs to count only 1 day. I'm sorry. I have a kasha here in the Gemara. I don't think that it's zil kari beirav. I'll give to every intelligent Israeli that is ignorant to read the Torah, and I'll ask him, did you infer from these psukim that it's a person that saw 1 day needs to count 1 day? No, I don't think that they will infer that. What they can infer, though, is that there is no hint in the psukim that a shomeres yom keneged yom doesn't have to count at all. I agree with that. And that was actually the issuing of the ruling. Yeah, so maybe I'm now withdrawing a little bit from my kashyas. Excuse me if I'm confusing you. Because perhaps the Gemara can defend itself from my kashyas in a very simple way. What is the error that we're putting here at stake? The error is that the Sanhedrin said that a shomeres yom keneged yom doesn't have to count at all. Well, here, the pshat of the Torah, even though it was said there Yamim Rabim, but it is below Es Nidasa, V'safrala melamed shesoferet echad le'echad. Here, maybe it's something that the tzdokim can admit regarding it. At any rate, let's see the answer of the Gemara. The Amrei, second row, the Amrei, Ha'ara'a Sharia. Gemara Bia, I'm in the second row, yeah, of the wide rows. The Amrei, so the Gemara actually so much is impressed by this kasha on Shmuel, and the Gemara wants to defend Shmuel's position that there is a criteria to bring a public rule that it won't contradict something that the tzdokim concede to. Meaning the Gemara accepts the assumption of the kasha that the tzdokim concede to the law that a shomeret yom keneged yom is not just exempt from anything. So the Gemara says, no, the Amrei, the Sanhedrin, issued the following, the Mishnah talks about the following case. The Mishnah is saying, the Amrei, Ara'a Sharia, Gmar Hu De'asira. The Gemara says, I'll tell you, what was the ruling that the Sanhedrin issued, that the Mishnah said that a public bull is brought. Not just that there is no Shomeris Yom Keneged Yom. That when is a person chayev? When is a person chayev in Shomeris Yom Keneged Yom? When he had intercourse with a lady that saw blood for one day. Only when he had full intercourse with her. But if it was just the beginning, what we call tchilat bi'ah, ha'ara'ah, okay, there are all kinds of discussions. What is exactly ha'ara'ah? The technical discussions. Is it just that it's touching the place? At any rate, it's not a full action. It's only a beginning of an action and then quits. And there's a whole halachic discussion. I'll give you an example. The Gemara in Kiddushin, Daf Yud. As you know, the Mishnah in Kiddushin says that you do Kiddushin in one of three forms. Kesef, money. That's how we do it nowadays usually. When we give the ring, it's giving money and making the Maisa Kiddushin via that way, that channel. There are three ways to make an Isha an Ashes Ish, yeah? To change her halachic status from Panui, will we say Panui, a not married lady, to a Mekudeshet lady, an Ashes Ish. Either you give her money and you tell her, Harayat Mekudeshet li b'tabat zokedat Moshe Israel. So money, or shtar, you give her a document that was written, of course, kosherly, halachically, that the document written there, Titkadshili b'shtar zeh, meaning I announce that you're my wife in this document, okay, shtar, that's Kiddushi shtar. And the third option of issuing Kiddushin, though Rav was giving lashes, says in the Gemara, to anyone who used that way, meaning that's not the recommended way by the sages, but if someone did it, if someone had intercourse with a lady, two witnesses seeing that that they went to the room, etc., and he told her, Hitkadshili, and the witnesses are Hitkadshili beviazo, you will be my wife by this intercourse. That is a valid halachic way to change her status from a panuya to a shesish. That's the meaning of the first Mishnah in Kiddushin. Haisha niknet bekesef, shtar, uvia. Either kesef or shtar or bi'ah. Now this bi'ah, the Gemara in Kiddushin Daf Yud has a discussion whether this bi'ah is only a full action, gmar bi'ah, or even tchilat bi'ah kona, meaning even if someone did an initial act, not a full act, okay, that is enough to be defined as bi'ah. We have parallel discussions, and by the way, interestingly enough, there's a shita in the Gaonim and the Tosfot Daf Yud that say that there is a difference between Kiddushin and Nisuin regarding this question. I'm not going into it now. Whether the legal valid action that creates the halachic result is even only the beginning of the action or only the full action. Tosfos made in the name of Rav Nisim Gaon, and Reb Chaim has a lumdish explanation to it, why there is a difference between Kiddushin and Nisuin regarding that question. There is a parallel question in all the sugyas and Yavamos regarding all kinds of arayos. Again, every time that the Torah says that an intercourse has a halachic meaning, okay, Kiddushin, Nisuin, Yibum, Arayos, Nida, okay? Every time that intercourse has a halachic meaning or halachic implication, the question will be brought by the Amorites, the Gemara. Are we requiring really here the entire action? Gmar Bia, or only the beginning of the action is already causing the halachic result, is called Bia. What is called Bia? What is called intercourse? Only the full action or even the beginning of the action. So now, Mara here offers perhaps what the Mishnah is talking about is a case where a public bull is brought, is not that they denied the entire category of Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom. Rather, that they said there is a nida in the Torah, the Sanhedrin. And not only that there is a nida in the Torah, there is a Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom in the Torah. However, what they said is that only when will you be chayiv when you have relationships, forbidden relationships with that impure lady that saw for one day blood out of her period? Only when you did the full action. But when you did only the initial one, then you're exempt. The Isser is only on Gmar Bia. Oh, by the way, I must tell you, I remind you the discussion of the shir that was 2 weeks ago. I was complaining about the Mishnah, if I may say. How come the Mishnah sees a mistake in a category, in an entire category, not as a fundamental mistake? If you were talking about extreme ignorance, to say there is no Shomeres Yom, that's extreme ignorance. Look how the Gemara creates and interprets that the Mishnah is really talking about a mistake regarding a detail. Because whether it's Gmar Bia or Hara'ah, that's already a mistake in a detail. Like the example I gave you about Kli Rishon and Kli Sheni in Bishul, in Shabbos. All right, but look at that. The Gemara is not even comfortable even with this answer. The Gemara says, Hanami Ktiv et Mekora He'era. What do you mean? Gemara says. Even this detail, whether it's a full intercourse or just the beginning of the intercourse, even this is something that the Tzdokim will concede to. Because there is an explicit verse saying, Et Mekora, Makor is the organ of the lady. Et Mekora He'era. What is He'era? He'era means only the initial action. So you see regarding arayos, a definition that is explicit in the Torah, that even not the full act, even just the ha'ara'ah, I'll translate to you literally the term ha'ara'ah. Irui, you know what is irui? Irui is to spill. Okay, leha'arot. So leha'arot means not necessarily the entire act. That's how they understand. But ha'ara'ah is just a beginning of it to be over, you know. So at Mekorah He'era, you see that the minute that there was some contact, physical contact, there is a need for physical contact. A physical contact between the organ of the man and the organ of the lady. So at Mekorah He'era, that is sufficient. So there is a verse that is saying that you don't need the entire action. So we're challenging Shmuel. How come you say that the Mishnah gives as an example? The Mishnah gives as an example that a Sanhedrin that says that one who had intercourse with Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom is exempt. That contradicts an explicit verse in the Torah. So that Tzdokim concede to it. You wanted to say that what the Sanhedrin issued is that one that had only an initial, not a full act, only some contact between the organs. That's what they were saying. That's what they were saying, that there is no Shomeret, that there is no that only here there is no punishment for it, that it's mutter even. The only thing that is forbidden is the full act. No, that Tzdokim concede that even not a complete act is forbidden because it's an explicit verse. Et mekora ha'era. The Amri, I'm in the last line word there in the second wide rows. The Amri, kedarka asura, shelo kedarka sharia. No, therefore we must say that the example in the Mishnah, according to Shmuel, is the following. The example in the Mishnah is that they said, kedarka asura, shelo kedarka sharia. There is the classic way for intercourse, and there is the shelo kedarka, not in the, and what it really implies is from the back, okay? So the maybe their erroneous ruling was that they said that the only thing that is forbidden to do with the shomeres yom keneged yom, okay, with that lady that's only for one day, the only thing that is forbidden is doing it in the classic way, but doing it from behind is permitted. And this is a thing that perhaps the tzdokim are not conceding with, and therefore that's an example for where an erroneous ruling that the public bull will be brought, because obviously according to the halacha, either ways is forbidden. So now the Gemara dismisses that also. Haktiv, it's written in the Torah, mishkavei isha. There is a midrash, and look at that. Again, they understand that it's a midrash in a level of pshat that the tzdokim concede to. It's written that what is forbidden generally in arayos is mishkavei isha. The sages are inferring mishkavei, lishkav, to sleep with. Mishkavei is plural. So since it's plural, the sages are making a drasha, a halachic drasha, that since mishkavei isha, sleepings with the lady, with the forbidden lady, sleepings is plural, lyings, lying with the lady, lyings is plural. It includes both regular relationships and also relationships from behind. Now I ask you, does every little kid, when he reads mishkave, that's the interpretation he gives? So you have here a drash that is not the mamash clear-cut pshat, and yet still the Gemara assumes that the tzdokim concede to it. Interesting. Okay. So now, haktiv mishkavei isha. At any rate, we're stuck. We didn't find an example of the Mishnah. The Mishnah gave an example that a Sanhedrin that issued that one who has relationships with a shomeres yom keneged yom is exempt because that's such a ruling. There is no public ruling. And all of these rulings, be it that it's only not the full act, be it that it's not in the regular way of it, all of these that tzdokim concede to, that it's forbidden. So why isn't the public bull, according to Shmuel, brought? No, excuse me, why is a public bull brought? The Mishnah is saying that a public bull is brought in such an error. And according to Shmuel, it shouldn't be brought because the tzdokim are actually conceding with the halacha here in all the matters. The Amri, so the Gemara now has to say the following very sophisticated ukimta for the Mishnah, according to Shmuel. The Amri, kedarka, one second, I'm sorry, I apologize. 1 second. Yes, I apologize. We'll just finish here this shtickle Gemara and we're done for today. The Amri. So we need to bring an ukimta to the case that the Mishnah said that a public bull is brought regarding an error regarding Shomer Yom Keneged Yom. And the case must be a case, according to Shmuel, that the tzdokim are not conceding to the right halacha. Amri, Kedarka Asur, I'm in the third row. The Amri, in the middle. The Amri, Kedarka Asur, Afilu Hara'a. Beshalo Kedarka, Mar Bi'aud Asur. Aval Hara'a, Sharia. Wow, wow, wow. That is very sophisticated. They're saying, you know what is the case the Mishnah is talking about? That it's an error. That is brought because the tzdokim are not agreeing with the sages here. This is the case. They said a shomeres yom keneged yom. Shomeres yom keneged yom. They said the following: if the intercourse is in the regular way, then even not the full act is forbidden. Clear. But if it's done from behind, then only a full action is prohibited. But just a minimal, not incomplete. An incomplete act is mutter. So you see, they said they did one on the other, meaning if there are two problems, A, it's not a full act. B, it's not in the ordinary way. If only these two things are met, here they're issuing a ruling to Sanhedrin that this is mutter. And actually the halacha is that this is also asur. And the assumption of the Gemara that the tzdokim here, dafka, are not assuming that if there are two problems, both not in the ordinary way and not a full act, that this is also asur. Wow. Now the Gemara is not pleased with this answer too. Ihachi afilu nidanami. What do you mean? So even if they would take why does the Mishnah, according to this, if you're saying that this little detail, I just remind you that I was complaining about the Mishnah 2 weeks ago that the mistakes are regarding categories. Look what the Gemara made out of that category. A detail of a detail. That was the error. Okay? But the Gemara here asks a very clear question. If this is your interpretation to the Mishnah, so why on earth the interpretation was regarding Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom? Why did the case of the Mishnah was Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom? Speak about the classic Nida. Speak about the classic Nida. Say that the Sanhedrin issued a ruling and said, Yesh Nida b'Torah, there is a concept of Nida in the Torah, but if one is having intercourse with a Nida, how? Behind and not a full act, he's exempt. And this is a ruling that the tzdokim, this is a law that the tzdokim are not agreeing necessarily with saying that it's in error, okay? Meaning that tzdokim here maybe, just as you say regarding Shomeret Yom Keneged Yom, that this is not a clear and evident mistake. The same thing regarding the classic Nida. So why did you speak B'chlal about Shomeret Yom Keneged Yom? That's a very good question because the mistakes are not really referring to that. You see, the Gemara here is very smart. It detected the gap between the pshat of the Mishnah and what we got to. The pshat of the Mishnah is that people know what is Nida, and the people not necessarily know that much about Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom. But at the end of the day, according to the explanation of the Gemara, in order to defend Shmuel, it came out that the ignorance is b'chlal not regarding Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom. It's regarding the details of what is the definition of intercourse. And this is true if the tzdokim disagree regarding the details of what is the halachic definition of intercourse, that the tzdokim are not agreeing that if I have two problems, it's not in the ordinary way, and it's not a full act, that this is still halachically considered forbidden intercourse. That is true both regarding Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom and regarding Nida. So why are you giving the example of Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom? Good question of the Gemara. Not that the Gemara needs my compliments. Iachi, afilu nida nami, ela. So rather, says the Gemara, leolam kedarka. Ude Amri, and what was? So the Gemara makes a full U-turn from all of what the Gemara tried to say. We're talking here about a regular intercourse. The Mishnah is talking about a regular intercourse, classic and full act. That's not the point. Or, I don't know, full act. Lolam kedarka, we're talking about the regular way. Ude Amri ha'ara'a, excuse me, Ude Amri ha'ara'a, bi'isha davahu dechtiva. What are they saying? Ha'ara'a, bi'isha davahu dechtiva. Meaning, they're saying, one second. I just don't want to make it, and we'll finish with this. Yeah. Meaning, they're saying when it's written et mekora he'era, we had a verse, if you remember, the Gemara claimed that the fact that not a full act is forbidden is a pshat, because there is a verse, et mekora he'era. Its source, yeah, the Gemara brought a pasuk to say that even not a full act is halachically considered intercourse. Now the Gemara says something very simple. Only regarding a classic nida that the tzdokim interpret that this, not the tzdokim, excuse me. The Beidin are issuing the following mistake. The Sanhedrin are saying, this verse that says that even not a complete act is a halachic act is only regarding the nida. But regarding the Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom, this pasuk doesn't apply to. And this is a thing that perhaps the tzdokim, and here, now I'm a little more comfortable. Because the tzdokim are saying, okay, there is a verse that an initial act is like a full act. But perhaps it's only regarding when it's written, Anida, but not regarding the Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom. So they made a mistake. The Sanhedrin made here a mistake that the tzdokim are not conceding, meaning the fact that we, the rabbis, say that not a complete act is like a full act, a partial act is like a full act, and that it applies also to Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom, is not that evident from the psukim. Therefore, this is the case that was their error. So in sum, what was the pshat of the Mishnah according to Shmuel? That Sanhedrin made an erroneous ruling that regarding Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom, only a full act is forbidden and not an initial act. And this is a law that the tzdokim are not, it's not a simple mistake that the tzdokim are agreeing with. And the next answer, there's Elalam Kedarka. Dava means nida. Ve'ibait ema. The Amre Zava lo havya ela beimame. Dichtiv kol yemei zova. Fascinating. A total different answer, a very cute answer. What was the mistake? Not denying the entire category of Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom, as the pshat of the Mishnah applies. But in order to defend Shmuel, we're saying that the mistake was that they said, Zava lo havya ela b'imame. Only if she saw at daytime, she is contaminated. But if she saw at nighttime, she's not contaminated. And of course, that's not the halacha. The halacha is that it doesn't matter whether she sees it day or night. Because it says Kol Yemei Zova, and perhaps the Sanhedrin erroneously interpreted literally, Yemei means daytime. And actually the interpretation is not that, but Yom many times does mean an entire Yamama. How do you say Yamama? What's the word for Yamama? Full 24 hours. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, the Gemara here understands that the Tzdokim perhaps do interpret literally, that the Tzdokim are not conceding that Yemei Zova means entire 24 hours. The Tzdokim might also say that Yamama means, that Yemei Zova means only daytime. Pshat could be only daytimes. So now, okay, that's the conclusion. So 2 concluding remarks. A, 2 weeks ago, I was complaining about the examples that the Mishnah is giving for an erroneous ruling that you do have to bring a public bull because it's like erasing an entire category. Well, here we see that it turned to be, according to the explanation of the Gemara, in order to defend Shmuel, to mistaken details or more details. B, I'm a little surprised, and that's a kasha, that Shomeris Yom Keneged Yom, that it says V'safrala, and you learn from here, even though it says V'safra Shivat Yamim, Shomeris Yom Keneged Yom, the Gemara assumes that the Tzdokim accept that the pshat is that Shomeris Yom Keneged Yom is contaminated. However, that Yom means 24 hours, which is much more pshat. Here, Dafka the Gemara says that no, the Tzdokim are saying that Yom is only day, literally. Interesting. Okay. Beseno.
Rav, I have a question.
Yes. Only will, yeah, David, yeah, please.
Okay. Give me a little moment.
Go ahead.
Give me a little moment to formulate this question. Here we go. We've spent a tremendous amount of time talking about Sadokim and going into the different analysis. My simple question is this: why on earth do we care what the Sadokim have to say on anything? Because at the end of the day, speaking for myself, because I can't speak for anyone else, I'm all in for Yiddishkeit, which means that I want to commit to the Masorah of the oral Torah, which means that when the rabbis sit around in the Sanhedrin or the yeshiva or the kollel or wherever they're learning, what they have come to the conclusion over the last thousands of years, I'm basically in. Okay, there's going to be different...
David, excuse me for interrupting you, but there is a fundamental mistake in the question, okay?
Great.
So let me just... All of what you said, all of the drasha you gave here, the inspiring drasha about how much we're committed to the rabbinic tradition, and not the tzdokim, all of this is accepted by our Gemara. The Gemara never said something different. We are using here, that Shmuel is using what the tzdokim is saying as a criteria for what? As I explained last week, and even more so 2 weeks ago, so also please listen to the recording. The criteria is the following. That Tzdokim is like a lakmus paper for the following question, that this is of our interest. A public bull is brought by Sanhedrin only for a mistake that is not such an evident mistake that every kid understands. Meaning, what the Gemara Shmuel says, a public bull is brought only regarding an erroneous ruling regarding the law that the Tzdokim don't accept. Why? Because if they made a mistake, let's say they said there's no Shabbos in the Torah. Since the Tzdokim agreed that there is a Shabbos in the Torah, what does that mean that the Tzdokim agree with it? That every little kid that reads the Torah, every ignorant Jew that just reads the simple verses of the Torah can understand that there is a Shabbos. So if the Beit Din issued an erroneous ruling that there is no Shabbos in the Torah, it's not even a ruling. It's such a, and therefore there's no public bull brought. So it's not that we care what the tzdokim say or not say. The tzdokim are only a siman, an indicator to what kind of errors that's, if Sanhedrin is issuing a ruling regarding a law that even its tzdokim agree with, that means that they did such a mistake that every ignorant Jew will understand that it's a mistake. David, did you get your answer?
I did, but I'm still not, I understand you, it's setting a criteria for
No,
what is based.
we don't care what the tzdokim say or not say. That you're absolutely right. The tzdokim are just an example, or a clear example for if you are issuing a ruling, you're saying that a certain halacha that even the tzdokim accept, and you're saying that it doesn't exist, that means that you made such a fundamental error that it's even cannot be called an error. It's just, it's not even a ruling. Okay? That's what the Gemara is saying. That's what Shmuel is saying. Okay? And that's why I started the class today, David, saying that Gemara is really what it establishes, that here we have a halachic explanation to the difference between Pshat and Drash. Okay? That's all.
Okay, good.
Okay, Chaverim, Litraot. Shabbat Shalom.
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 Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat